like your only
your support.
friends and your only, the only world that you kind of know.
Right. Exactly.
Wow. I'm actually surprised that because sometimes with cult, and that's why it's good to hear your perspective, because people make assumptions. Usually in certain cults, like they really always try to keep you in. So I'm actually kind of surprised that they pushed her out, but maybe for him, because he was more head up, they had to keep him protected, and just, it's easier to get your mom out. Hey everybody, welcome to Lauren.live, the spirituality, health, and lifestyle podcast. Today I have Kayla Marie with me from Kauai. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Aloha.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. So Kayla and I actually go way back. I mean, it's been what? I don't
10 years.
At least 10 years, maybe more. We used to kind of know each other from actually the company Kind Bars. We worked together, and we just stayed in touch over the years. And Kayla has a really, really interesting story. And I knew from the beginning of my podcast, she was actually somebody that I knew I wanted to have on. I just think you have a really inspiring, interesting story that I think can be very, motivational and touching and inspiring for a lot of people. So Kayla grew up kind of born and raised for her childhood in the Mennonite faith. And then I'll let her tell her story, but she was able to actually get out of the faith and kind of break free and find a lot of freedoms. In other words, a lot of work involved and some pain and other things that she can share. But she's been able to form her own spiritual beliefs and practice, which has been obviously very freeing and amazing. So we'll talk all about that. But I would love it if you could just share some of your background, your story, a little bit about the faith. Many people who aren't Mennonite or weren't raised in the faith really don't know a lot about it. There's words that have been thrown around. I try to be respectful, but let's be honest. I mean, there's a lot of perceptions, and you can tell it from your point of view, but some people would call it a cult. Others just call it a religion. There's good and bad things in all cults or religions or organized religion, whatever you want to call it. But share about that, because I think a lot of people don't know, and it'd be really interesting to hear. And then obviously you can kind of share how you moved out of it, and we can get into your current spirituality a little later too.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So I grew up Old Order Mennonite. There's a lot of different sects of Mennonite. There's Mennonites where you wouldn't even know that they're Mennonite. You would go to the grocery store and just see a normal person. We were not that. Everywhere we went, people were like, "What are you? Are you a nun? Are you we just really stuck out everywhere we went. We wore head coverings. We made our own clothing. So we wore really long dresses, and I couldn't show my elbows, and I couldn't show my knees. We had to wear black stockings, black shoes, no makeup, no jewelry. Couldn't cut our hair. So very, very, very strict. And I would say sort of the best way to describe that was they were sort of like literalists of the Bible. Meaning they didn't really see things as metaphor. So a lot of people would say they would read the Bible and they would hear, they would read the part where you're supposed to be subservient to your husband or something. And they would really take that literally, you are the husband's the head of the house. You just do whatever he says. So yeah, I was 7 years old when we joined. My parents were not raised in the Mennonite church. They were, I would say, raised in very non-religious households. And come to find out later with my dad, he was really, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit more later, but he was really trying to find healing the best way that he knew. And so what he would do is he would sort of go to the extreme churches. We started off, before we joined the Mennonite church, we started off going to, every church, the Methodists, the Baptists, the Pentecostal, just everything that we could find. And eventually he found the Mennonite, and it was the most strict and the most, intense. And so, the ways that we sort of like my family dynamic was, I was a musician. My father had me learn the piano really early, and he loved music. He loved to sing. And I was just naturally really talented at that. And so when I was really young, I started playing the piano, and then he found harp lessons. So when I was 12 or 11, I started playing the harp, and we would go around to all these different churches, and we would, we were sort of this family that was like put on a pedestal. Everyone saw us and they were just like, wow, what a perfect family. And I have two brothers who were also really talented, and we would be doing these like performances together. And my dad was really charismatic and had this beautiful smile, and everybody loved him. And my mom was the perfect, subservient, quiet wife, like housewife. And we homeschooled for a long time. And then eventually when we got really involved in the Mennonite church, we went to the Mennonite school. And there was like maybe 15 other kids that were there from grades kindergarten up until I think we went to 10th grade. And so, yeah, we would go to church twice a week. Every day we had devotions. So just at our house, like everything we did was very, it was very all about the Bible. We were sort of trained, like everything you do, everything you say always goes back to God, which I actually really love. Now I'm like, there's so many amazing values that were instilled in that experience. But yeah, it was just this very like all consuming, and it was, I also call it a cult. I tell people like I was raised in a cult, because it was, we had to all dress the same. We were told where we shopped. We were told, where, like how to speak, essentially. We couldn't have a silver bumper on our car. We had to paint it black.
Interesting.
We couldn't listen to music.
Significance of that?
Because they said it was worldly. Anything that was worldly. So even shoes. Like I remember one time someone came to visit. Like they were always very open with outsiders coming to the church. And so some people came and they were wearing white shoes, and all of us were just like, oh my God. Ooh, yeah. Wow. White shoes, Wow. It was to that level of strictness and just like kind of brainwashing, and everything on the outside was just like worldly, evil. It's out to deceive you. Everything's out to get you. You have to just follow the ways of the church. And so really the way that we were all sort of, I would say, trained, my brothers were sort of trained to be like the provider of the house. And I was trained to be a housewife. Take care of children and like be really, really fast at like cleaning and making a bed. Like I remember going to, I would spend a lot of time at different Mennonites' houses, and, we would do like the quilting table. Like we would all sit around this table and we would like do the quilts, and then we would make food, and we would talk about the kids and how grateful we are to God for this. And Lord willing, our husbands will, get the job. Obviously I wasn't saying that, but I was listening to all the moms talk about this. And, yeah, so, very, very, very cut off. We were very, very cut off from the outside world. And so eventually, when I was 14, I had been hiding a secret my whole life. And that secret was the extent of what was happening abuse-wise in my family. So my brothers experienced a lot of abuse physically from my dad, as well as I did. My mom obviously was aware of that. No one else was really aware of that. And then he was really sexually abusive to me from ages, I believe it started when I was 3 years old, sort of on and off from 3 to 14. And at 14, it got to the point to where I knew if I didn't say something, it was going to go beyond what I could handle. And so I did. And I told my aunt. She was the first person that I told. And she eventually went to my grandfather and told him about it, my dad's dad. And they didn't do anything right away. They didn't do anything like really fast or harsh right away. I think they wanted to think about how to like fully, I'm not really exactly sure what was going on with them, but
were they in the faith?
They were not.
Okay.
No. Mm-mm. No, they weren't actually religious at all. I don't think any of them are particularly religious. So about, I would say maybe like a week or two later, I went to my cousin's house. She was doing like a play, and I was out jumping on the trampoline, and my grandpa was there. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Kayla, I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, do you think that that's going to happen again? You know, do you think that it's going to keep happening? And I said, yeah, I really do. And he said, "Okay, we're going to take you out of your home tonight. And basically just like the clothes you have, that's what you got." And so they took me out of the home. I went and stayed with my aunt, who at the time, this is my dad's sister. And at the time she was in her early or like mid 20s. Wow. She's quite a bit younger than my dad, and was just so courageous with me and like so loving. And she had this wonderful home near Green Lake. And she had sort of like gone through some similar things and was going through like counseling. And so I think she really had it in her heart to really help me. So I stayed there for the summer. My dad was arrested by his best friend. Wow. His best friend was the sheriff in town and showed up just crying and, you know, like, is this really true? Like, did this really happen? And my dad never denied anything, you know, he was very like, yeah. So that's initially how I sort of separated from the church. Now, at that time, my dad went to jail and the Mennonite church was saying, don't divorce. They were telling my mom, don't divorce your husband. It's not, you know, it's not in the Bible. You can't do that. You have to stay with him. You have to forgive him and just keep going. So she was really grappling with so much at that time. She had 3 kids. We did not have a lot of money. We were in debt. She hadn't worked for 15 years and she decided to go back to work, and she went back to the hospital and worked in the labs there. But still it was just, you know, all of us were just like, what do we do? You know, like our whole family had sort of been torn apart. And we were all, you know, my mom was like having to grapple with the truth of what happened. My brothers were having to grapple with the truth of what happened. It was such a shock to everybody. So yeah, she was really struggling. We were all really struggling. And I would say, gosh, maybe 2 months into it, she ended up having some other really good friends say, actually, you really need to leave him. And this is not something that changes. He has a sickness, he's ill. Like, you need to divorce him. And so she ended up listening to that and getting a divorce. And shortly after, we were still in the Mennonite church. I ended up going back home, leaving my aunts for the summer, going back home. And I was originally going to go to school at the Mennonite school again. And one night she took me into her bedroom. My mom and I are really, really close. We've always been like really good friends. And she took me into her bedroom and she said, I need you to read a page in my diary. Because whatever was in there, she couldn't say it out loud to me. So I opened her diary and I read the page, and it was explaining how when the children were gone, this basically head guy in the church was coming over and was offering money to my mom to help out, and was also really wanting more than that. And was feeling her up and all this stuff. He was also married and had 10 children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I grew up with his daughters. I went to school with them. And so I was livid. I was so mad. Even though it was like at that age, I didn't even really understand what was happening. You know, it was like, I knew that it was wrong. But I didn't have the words for like predator or anything like that. I was just like, what? Like, how can this guy be doing this? Like, why? So I went to his daughters and I told them, I said, you know, your dad kissed my mom. And they were so mad at me. And they're like, you're a liar. Like, you've been out in the world. You're wearing pants. Like, we can't trust you. And they went to their dad and asked him. And he said, yeah, I did. I did do that. Wow. Totally admitted to it. So after that, they ended up getting the whole church together. And, you know, basically putting my mom and him in front of everyone. And saying, you know, Randy, like, don't do that again. Like, you know that that's wrong. We're not doing that here. You need to be more responsible. And then they told my mom she was a temptress and she was no longer welcome.
So they turned it on the woman. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So at that time, we were just like, oh, thank God. Like, we're out of this cult. Like, whew. You know, my mom was not super into it, but it's hard to leave, you know. It's hard because they create such a web. Everything is, you know, it's like, it's not only in the mind, but it's in your finances. It's in your life.
It's like your only friends support. And your only, the only world that you kind of know. Right.
Exactly.
Wow. I'm actually surprised that because sometimes with cult, and that's why it's good to hear your perspective, because people make assumptions. Usually in certain cults, like, they really always try to keep you in. So I'm actually kind of surprised that they pushed her out. But maybe for him, because he was more head up, they had to keep him protected, and just, it's easier to get your mom out.
Well, and we all kind of have a feeling, it's hard to know for sure, but we all kind of speculate that his family was sent to start this community in Centralia, Washington. They were sent from Pennsylvania, and a lot of different families were sent from different areas because there was nothing in Centralia, Washington. And when my family was starting, had joined the church, it was very, very new there. So we were a very small group of people. We were really the only ones that were like Washington natives. Other people came from BC, Pennsylvania, mostly from Pennsylvania, some from Oregon. So we actually speculate that something similar happened in Pennsylvania, maybe. Of course, it's hard to know, but.
Wow. And so Were you guys living in your own house in your own like neighborhood, or was there like a commute? Like, okay, because sometimes people live on like a compound or something. So you were living in a separate place. You just attended churches, but you were expected to like follow the guidelines in your own world and your own home, even though you weren't on like a compound or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
We were a little bit more, our family was a little bit more removed. We lived in a tiny town,
Okay.
probably 30 minutes away from them. And we also were slightly rebellious. We weren't supposed to play music, and we played music.
Okay.
That was really the only thing.
Got it.
We played instruments.
Wow.
We still didn't listen to the radio.
How dare you? Yes.
Yeah. So
wow. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing your story. That is incredible. And so then you guys left, and then you're just trying to figure out how to like survive without your dad, right? Because was he still in jail at the time? How to survive out in the real world.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and this is where it gets just like, whew. This is sort of where it all starts for me. Mm-hmm. It's like I had the family unit, the family home, the sort of like childhood full of religious dogma and so much. It just really screwed with my mind. It was like all this religious dogma with stuff that I did really connect to, and I did feel like I believed.
Right. That kind of must be like a mind F, if you will. Kind of F's with you, because there's like I always, like my husband grew up Mormon, and I mean, it's very different. It's just he has issues with it now, like the man-made aspects of it. But it's like he always tells me about all the beautiful, wonderful parts, the family-oriented parts, the support. Like you said, it all sounds great, like God and love and family and serving one another. Like those are all wonderful principles, but there's just, it screws with your mind, because then there's so many rules and expectations. And if you don't, you're shamed or guilted. And it's just like, ooh, that part doesn't feel very like loving. And you know what I mean? So I could imagine how that would really mess with your head.
Yeah, it really messes with your head, just regardless whether there's abuse or not. But then if there's that added aspect of abuse, while you're also this like poster child for the church, So yeah, there were so many things I had to unlearn, so many things. And it went so deep. And even to this day, I'm still finding things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still like feeling like I need to perform. I'm still, just different little things that I still have to like be conscious of and aware of, and that I'm finding. And it, that might be a lifetime that I'm doing that.
Sure.
Doing that.
Maybe that's part of why you came here, was to like break through some of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Okay. So like, I mean, I know it's hard to like compact it in a few minutes. Obviously you had a lot of like grief and probably pain, and like, I'm sure there was even some guilt or just confusion, and you had like the abuse aspect, the religious aspect, but I mean, like, what were some ways that you were able to kind of heal over the years? I know that took a long time, and you're probably, like you said, you're still going through things, but like, what were things that you found joy in the real world, and, you kind of gave you hope and kept you propelling? And I know it's not all just like forward, like there's probably setbacks and, it's the healing journey, but like, what were some things that did help you get out of it, just for people that might be going through similar things, and it may not be as, intense as yours, but even just simply leaving any organization or anything, like what were things that helped you kind of get to where you are now?
I feel like that sort of, I to really paint the picture of that, I have to sort of tell more of the story.
Sure, please do. Yeah.
And so I would say that, let's see, where do I start? Growing up in the Mennonite church, I had this, the aspect of forgiveness instilled really deeply within me. And I thought it was as easy as choosing to forgive. But it's not. Like forgiveness, I think it's similar to grief. It has these stages, and all of these stages have to be really truly felt and really truly experienced. So my first phase was anger, like really, really intense anger. I was angry at the world. I was angry at myself. I was angry at men. So angry. And I expressed that through, like, I ended up starting this like metal band with my brothers and was like a drummer, and I had a mohawk, and I just went like swinging pendulum, right? Like I just went far into a complete opposite of how I was raised. And that was very cathartic for me. It was really important for me to do that. I also went through a phase in my life where I completely denied all things spiritual. It was actually a really long period of time. And, I would just laugh at like anything that had to do with spirituality. I just thought that it was completely ridiculous. And if anyone knew anything about people that were spiritual, they would turn the other way. So I was in that for a really long time. And I at 16 years old, I was kicked out of my house. And my mom had gotten remarried, and my stepdad and I did not get along. He didn't like the music that I listened to. He wanted me to wear like boys' clothing, and there was just a lot of headbutting. And he also was very religious. So there was like this certain aspect where I was like, there's no way that another man's going to tell me what I can do, And so one day I got home from school, and he had gone through everything in my room and thrown away things and read my diary. And I was just like, no way. Like, you can't do that. I hardly even know you. Like, you definitely can't do that. And he said, well, if you don't want to follow the rules in my house, like, you can just leave. So I packed up a duffel bag, and I left.
Wow.
And I was then a high school dropout at that point. Eventually I was staying with some family in Bellevue, and they really encouraged me. They were like, Kayla, you're really smart. Like you need to go to some sort of school. And I sort of like gave in. I wasn't really interested in it. I was always told I was never going to go to school because as women, you don't go to college. And I was never seen as intelligent when I was growing up, so it was very much this like, you're beautiful and you're talented, and that's what you do. And you're going to be a great mom someday. And, so I gave in, and I got into this program called CPS, which is Career Educational Options. Is that right? CEO. And that was basically trying to figure out like, what do I want to do with my life? And during that program, I met my first love, and I met him on campus, and he completely shifted everything for me. That was sort of this Y in the road where it was like what I was feeling in life. I was so numb, and everything was totally gray. I could be happy. Like I could put on a smile. I could sort of function. But everything was just so numb and so gray. And I met him, and it was just this really, really, beautiful, like spiritual connection. And he introduced me to the Tao Te Ching, and we would sit and he would read me the Tao Te Ching, and it just opened my eyes to everything. I could feel things again. I could see color again. I was excited about life. And, one night he called and he said, Kayla, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life. And I love you so much. And my parents are, his dad is a lawyer, pretty like big time lawyer in Bellevue. And he said, my parents are going to buy us a home and a car in Olympia, so you can be close to your family. We can start our lives. He had just gotten a record label. He was a really amazing musician. He'd gotten a record label in New York. And so we were like stoked. And then I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. I couldn't get a hold of him. I called and called and called. Couldn't get a hold of him. And then it was the last day of that quarter. I got back to my great aunt's house, and I was supposed to move out that day to go stay with my grandma. And she met me at the door, and she's like, Kayla, you need to sit down. I was like, okay. So I sat down, and she said, I got a phone call from Michael's parents, and Michael died. Oh my gosh. They don't know why. He fell asleep and he didn't wake up. Oh my gosh. Like, he had sleep apnea. And so that sent me into this very intense, deep kind of spiral. But it was in a way I had to hit this ground bottom. And then all I wanted was to find the truth. Yeah. You know, it was just like, maybe in a way of like honoring that, that connection, and that, like, the way that he sort of facilitated healing in my life. And so I just studied and I studied and I studied everything I could get my hands on. I studied it. And throughout the years, I couldn't hold down a job. I was so dysfunctional. I didn't know how to handle what was really deep within me. I went through 7 different therapists in a summer. And one of the therapists, I'll never forget it. She sat me down, and I think it was the second time I ever saw her. She sat me down, and I was like, yeah, you know, I'm actually like, I'm really good. Like, I'm really good. I'm doing good. And she's like, uh-huh. She goes, yep. Well, you might think that right now, but by the time you get in your 20s, you're going to realize it's all going to catch up to you, and you're going to start feeling what's, you know, the gravity of what happened to you in your life. Because I just wasn't feeling it. I could talk about it, and I would kind of have this, like, you know, like nervousness and this like guilty laughter, like, yeah, this happened in my life. It's funny or weird. I don't know. Ugh. And I just couldn't face it, you know? And so, yeah, I just kept going on within my day and my life. And I ended up getting a job at like a bakery. I moved in with my mom and made peace with my stepdad just to be kind of close to them again. And got a job at a bakery. And then I met my now ex-husband. And it was basically like within a week of meeting, he invited me to live with him, gave me the keys to his apartment. You know, it was all kind of a done deal. And then I found out he had a son. And when I went over to his house to meet his son, this little boy, he's half Laotian. He comes out, he's this huge brown eyes. He comes out of the closet and looks up at me and puts out his hand with the cutest smile and says, "Nice to meet you." And I was just in love. I was just like, oh my gosh, this child, like, he's so amazing. And yeah, I just completely fell for that. And, you know, I was like in love again and all this stuff. And he said all the right things and really took me in. And he had the same like hatred towards my father, which I always really wanted to find in people, you know, like, yeah, hate my dad with me. Like, that shows that you're a good person or something. And we ended up getting married. And then after we got married, I started to realize, oh, I think he has an alcohol problem. And the alcohol problem started to get really, really bad. And then eventually it was like, there were some other issues too. And a lot of other sexual issues and some things that were like getting to be similar flavors to what I experienced as a child. And it didn't really quite register at the time when I was going through it. You know, I was in it. And I was so loyal. I was so like in it for the long run.
Right.
And then eventually he ended up becoming abusive. And like one night, I'm not going to go into the details, but he ended up getting abusive. And I just said, I said to myself, like, I'm not actually going to be this woman.
Yeah. And
so somewhere within myself, like I found a way to leave that. At this point, I was 22 years old. And at this point, all of the emotions and all of the things that I had not been able to face within myself had become so, basically had become psychosomatic symptoms in my body. I was starting to get really ill. I was sick all the time. I had intense body fatigue. Sometimes I couldn't get out of bed for, several days. Wow. And that's when this sort of like the work stuff started to get really, complicated.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like these people came into your life for a reason. I'm sure you must believe that too, but like, because I know we have some similarities in our spiritual beliefs, but it's like they were there to help you heal, but also like make you look at the stuff. You almost had to go through that repeat, right, of the abuse for you to be like, whoa, look at this. Look at this part of the pain that you're holding on.
And that's really what now my understanding is, I'm not a victim. And if I was to stay in victimhood, then I would keep retelling the story through the relationships that I would find and the experiences that I would have. It took me really understanding how to face myself and how to take responsibility for my own life, my own feelings, and everything I've ever experienced. That really led me to that path of freedom.
And also like what you attract, right? Because I think a lot of people that have been abused will find themselves in abusive relationships. It's interesting what you attract in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, even when I knew you 10 years ago, there was some stuff happening then too. Actually, the last time you and I did an event together, I ended up taking these two people out who were like friends of a friend. I took them to a concert and was drugged that night and drugged and raped that night.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just a lot, it's just, there was just repeat after repeat and I couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't find my way. It was
you were
just
like thrown out in the real world and you were trying to navigate and there was just so much coming at you and
Right. And it's also, I didn't know how to even relate with people. It was so hard for me because I was taught my whole life, like the outside world is like evil and the outside world, like they were outsiders. And so, but I was also taught to be really loving. So I had this sort of like,
you probably were never told like, well, you were never in that situation. If someone gives you like, don't let someone just randomly give you a drink at a concert or like, you probably were never guided in that way. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. So anyway, that was the last straw for me. That was when I called out to the universe, like, please, please, please help me. I don't know if there's a God. I don't know what is there. I haven't experienced it myself. Like, please help me. So for the next several years, I was trying a lot of different spiritual techniques. I was seeing spiritual healers. I was seeing energy healers. I was seeing, gosh, I was doing meditations. I was doing anything that I could find. I was reading. And then eventually I got led to psychedelics. And I did mushrooms for the first time. And that really, actually, backtrack. That's not where it started. I smoked DMT. That was what changed everything for me. My experience with that was deeply, deeply profound. It was the first psychedelic I ever did. It's arguably one of the most intense ones you can ever do. I flew through this portal and was shot out to the other end into this world of different rooms with this guide that was showing me all these different things. And then eventually I was led to this riverside, and I was sitting at this river, and I was very consciously aware of how much I did not like myself, how much self-hatred that I had. And I look across and I see this beautiful woman walking towards me with long brown hair and this white dress. And I'm like, wow, oh, to be her someday, you know? And I realize, she gets closer, I realize it's me. And it was like my higher self. And she sat on her knees across from me, and she took my shoulders and she said, Kayla, don't worry about anything ever. Let me show you why. And then she touched her forehead to my forehead, and she said, this is where you're going. And it was the most beautiful, peaceful, heavenly space imaginable.
Wow.
And I came out of that experience saying, okay, everybody, like, sorry, there is a God. There is a spiritual realm. I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know the truth, but I know for sure that it exists. And after that experience, the friend who had shared that with me started telling me about ayahuasca. So for years, I was studying ayahuasca. I was really scared of it. I was terrified. I thought, on many occasions, there's absolutely no way that this isn't just completely evil, because like the snake stuff and I was like, that's obviously like the devil, you know, like that's so scary. But people would come up to me randomly. Like, I remember I was on the ferry once, and this couple came up to me and they're like, this is a weird question, but have you ever done ayahuasca before? And this was 10 years ago. It wasn't popular, really. And I was like, no, I've never done it. And then I had like a random person, you know, message me on Facebook. Have you ever done it? No. And then one summer I was working with this girl I became really close to, and she had just gotten back from Peru and was telling me all about ayahuasca. And I was like, okay, interesting. Maybe it is something that I want to do. But still, I was really resistant. It was probably about 5 years of me like holding this and wondering if it was something that I wanted to do. And I was just spiraling, you know. It was like, I wasn't getting the healing that I needed. I wasn't finding the answers. I would have some moments of growth. I would find little bits of confidence. I would find like my heart opening in certain ways, but I was still really, really, really miserable. And I ended up finding out that I had 7 tumors growing on my thyroid.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they were all benign. They're adenoma. So they can turn cancerous if they harden and if they grow. So they wanted to take my thyroid out. And I just said, no, I don't want to be on medication the rest of my life. You know, I'm going to figure out how to heal this. And eventually I decided it was time for me to try ayahuasca. And I I ended up traveling to the place that I went to try it first with this pretty well-known shaman. And my experience with him was, I walked away going, okay, it's kind of like mushrooms, whatever, not that big of a deal. I didn't feel this great healing from it at all. I also didn't feel particularly safe in the space that he held, which is very, very, very important. So yeah, one thing I did walk away from that ceremony with, though, was I had felt as though the medicine had come to me and she said, you've sat with me thousands of times and I want you to go in the jungle alone and sit with me, just the two of us. And I was like, okay, Kayla, like you're some like, you think you're such a cool, you're just some other like white girl thinking she had some spiritual, that she's special and that she can go and do this alone. So I was talking to some people about it, my really good friends that worked at this prayer camp. And I said, what do you think about that? Like, am I just being really silly? Or do you think that's something I could do? And they said, yeah, you definitely could. And so at the time they lived at this like Buddhist retreat center, and there was a temple there. And one night I set up a little nest in this temple, and I created this little altar space, and I set some intentions and did some prayers, and I drank 1 cup of ayahuasca. And that night changed my life forever.
Wow.
I remember so many moments where I was sitting up going, how is it even possible to have this amount of healing in one night? How is it even? I knew that it was happening because it was so visceral. It was so real. It was so clear. I saw so many moments of my life that I've actually already lived. Like I saw my partner now.
Wow.
I saw two of my children. I saw living very similar to how I live now, like really simply connected to nature in Hawaii, really letting go. It was like I was shown all these different things of like letting go of this need for society's approval, and really just getting back to God. And that night, I mean, I was held in the arms of God.
Wow. Literally
like this. And I remember just being there and saying, is this ayahuasca thing okay? Like, is this okay? And ayahuasca was right there. And he's like, absolutely. Like, we're together in this. Like, there's no separation here. And so then I'd say, okay. And then she would go, so can we heal you a little bit more? Okay. And then I would lay down,
Wow.
and I would see these guides over me and doing this work. And yeah, that was a huge pivot in the road for me. And after that, I went back to Seattle where I was living, and everything felt different. It was like I didn't even know how to live in my own house. Like my house felt different. It didn't feel like mine. My relationship felt different. I felt really alone. Like it just, I just experienced something that no one else could really understand, and it's so hard to explain. But I just really dedicated myself to it. And I started to ask around, like, who can I study with? Who can I sit with? And I did it as much as I possibly could. And I never had depression ever again. All of these body issues started to go away. All of these sicknesses started to go away. My head cleared up. My tumors shrank from 7 to 3.
On their own. You didn't go in and
On their
remove. That's incredible.
Yeah. And so many things started to shift in my life. I really started to grapple with what had happened in my childhood, what had taken, and all of the things that sort of like did bring in to my life, you know. That was a really big part of the forgiveness was like, man, you know, my dad did all this stuff to me, and it's his fault that then it happened again in my marriage, and then it happened again after that. And I really blamed so much on him. And sitting with this specific medicine, it was like I was filled with so much compassion. Like, I got to feel the anger. I got to feel the disgust. I purged out the disgust, you know. I saw the ways in which those types of things are happening in the world to so many people. And then I saw the things I could do to be of service to keep that from happening, or to heal people, you know, to help heal people who've gone through that. And then also, number one was forgiving myself. So fast forward a couple years into my sort of ayahuasca journey. I had a very clear message that said, you need to go find your dad, and you need to really express to him your anger, because my anger was being expressed in the relationships that I had towards men, which was misdirected. So I went to my dad's, I found him and recorded with one of those like 360 cameras, recorded the whole conversation. I sat down and I said, this isn't for you. This is for me. And this is how I yelled and I screamed and I pounded on the table, and I just told him that I hated him. I said everything. And then I said, why? I asked him the questions. Why did you do it? What happened? Da, 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 da. I made him answer everything. And he sat there and he shook violently, and he answered every question that I had completely honestly. And you know, was just profusely apologizing. And I left and I said, you know, I'm probably never going to see you again. I needed this for my healing. So I left, and that was that. And couple years later, I'm still doing the work. I'm still, you know, finding all of this like healing and all this freedom within myself, and like love for myself. And eventually Father's Day comes around, and I had this like feeling in my heart, like, you know, I'm just going to call him. And I called him, and he was so happy. He was so happy. And a really important aspect to this story actually is that my dad was diagnosed with 3 different mental illnesses. He was bipolar, schizophrenic, and split personality. And then by the time that I was really ready to start maybe having a relationship with him, he was also dealing with MS. So that was taking away his like motor skills and his brain function. So he was sort of there and sort of not, you know. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel unsafe with him. And I had this kind of weird, strange conversation with him on Father's Day. And then I bawled my eyes out, you know, so hard afterwards. And then I decided I'm going to just keep doing it until I stop crying. And And then I decided I'm actually going to see him. So I went and I drove. I was living in Montana at the time, and I drove to his house in Washington to see him for his birthday. And I knew that I had reached the level of healing, a pretty miraculous level of healing, when I saw him and I hugged him, and all I felt was love in my heart.
Oh, wow.
Like, I felt so much love. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel unsafe at all. And I just wanted him to know, like, I forgive you. You know, maybe you don't want you in my life really, but I forgive you. And wow, that was so freeing. And I felt so like I just achieved like so much, you know, by doing that. And I would say maybe timeline is weird, but like 6 months later, a year-ish within the year, I saw him again, and he said, you know, I'm ready to share my story with you now. And I ended up sitting down with him, and he was filing a lawsuit against Boy Scouts of America. And he told me from the ages of 7 to 14, he was actually sex trafficked.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I ended up hearing the entire story of that. And like his parents, when he was growing up, when really, really young, were super, super abusive towards each other, towards him. Like, it was just such a toxic, not safe environment, you know? And my dad is a very like sensitive, artistic type. He's not the like rough and tough, I'm gonna go play sports guy. Like, he's very much feels a lot. And
so it's almost like what he knew from a young age, he then brought into to you, and, you know, gosh, that's
yeah. So I was sitting there with my dad, holding his hands, and he was just bawling. We're sitting in the park. I will never forget it. He's sitting on this log, and I was recording it, him telling his story. And I was holding his hands, looking into his eyes, telling him everything that people told me when I had started my healing journey. And, you know, he just was looking at me saying, I'm so ashamed, and I feel so, you know, the pain in his eyes, you know, like what he was experiencing in that moment was just so much, like he was feeling all the things that he didn't allow himself to feel before. And he looked at me and he said, he did this to me, and then I did it to my own daughter. Aww. Like, I didn't know how to find healing, you know? So yeah, that was like a whole level of kind of this like full circle.
Who would have ever thought that you would have helped him heal when you were the one that, oh my gosh.
Oh, no.
Incredible.
So yeah, it was just, I feel like I've just experienced so many miracles, you know, and it would take me 4 hours at least to really tell you like everything. That has transpired.
Just in the essence of time though, what is your relationship with your dad now, and how is he doing?
My dad, unfortunately, because he's so mentally not capable, he's homeless. He's in Seattle. He was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and he was calling me every single day. So when he has a phone and he is able to find my number, then he'll call me.
To you. Yeah.
He's the happiest guy I've ever met. he's out there on the streets. Like the last time I saw him, he was at the homeless shelter in Olympia. And I showed up. Of course, he had no idea I was going to be there. And he was helping this guy make packed lunches and AA book on the picnic table. And he was helping him to try to get over alcohol. And he said, if you feed people and you are of service, then it'll give you the confidence to stop drinking.
Oh, help other people. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what he does.
Oh, well, I'm glad that, you've have some relationship with him when you can and when he can. And that's incredible. I think I remember you posted or you shared with me. I think you posted, didn't you, a video of him playing a harmonica?
Yeah.
I remember that. But now that I've heard the story and, the history of the music, like, I just think that was a cool moment for you to capture.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's so sweet. Like, I'll call him now and I'll say, Dad, will you sing me a song? He goes, yeah. And he'll just sing, just like at the drop of the hat. Yeah. Like, he'll just sing a song that he wrote or made up.
Gosh, wow.
Yeah. Really, truly, like, just miraculous what
oh my gosh,
we've all experienced together.
Well, I know like you said, it could take forever because there's so much, but you told us an amazing, your story and healing. And I know it's a lifelong thing, but sure. I didn't know all of that. I knew some of it. But even like the tumor thing is interesting. Like, I wonder if that symbolized something in your throat chakra, like you were holding back for so long. And then are they gone or?
No, they're still there. I still have 3.
Interesting.
Like it's going away, but still, I still have like throat things that come up.
So you kind of watch it, but it's interesting that you've been able to maintain it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually such a gift to be able to share my story. I think that's even really healing because years ago, just starting to share it, I would sweat and I'd be so nervous, just sharing it to one person in the room. Yeah. So to be able to many people is really such a gift. And just for myself. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. My goodness. It's a lot. And, it's just like so humbling to hear how far you've come and I'm so proud of you. And, oh gosh, it's hard to like follow up on something just because there's so much, but I don't know. I just think you're such a beautiful soul. And from what I've known, you've always just been positive and happy. And I know when we knew each other, you were still going through a lot, but seeing where you've come now and you're in Kauai, you have a son and a lovely partner and you're living in an amazing yurt in Kauai. Like, what a cool life. But just, your openness and your spirituality, that's one thing. Like, I know we're coming up on an hour here, but I think just, I guess in closing, like, where are you now with your spirituality? Like, what are, like, it's possible for you to have a relationship with God. And I know it looks a lot different than, how you were raised. It's less structured, which so much freedom in that, right? But I mean, I guess, it'll be interesting, like what title we come up with for this episode, because, what I'm hearing at the end of it is forgiveness. And I think,
and freedom, really.
Freedom and forgiveness. And I just think those are huge pillars in the spiritual, no matter if it's structured or non-structured. I think, I believe that forgiveness is one of the highest vibrational forms of love and growth. And for us to be able to forgive each other, that is huge.
I also think it is something that is a little bit misunderstood too. Like I was saying, there's these different stages to it. And I feel like if there's one thing that I would want to really, well, there isn't just one thing. There's many, many things I would want to scream at the top of the roof for everyone to hear. But to really just trust the process in the forgiveness, and also forgiveness doesn't just mean like, okay, now I'm loving towards you and I just choose to forgive. It really is a journey.
Yeah. Forgiveness
is a journey. And you have to feel all of the things and allow all of the things to take place.
Well, but acceptance, I feel like is a part
so
of
it. So much of the healing for me comes from self-responsibility, and I'm still really involved in the ayahuasca community. the reason why I moved to Hawaii was to take an apprenticeship with a maestra, and learn from her and do co-facilitation and all of that. So really, really involved. I'm really passionate about it. And I'm still like a baby. I'm still learning, and I have a lot to learn. But right now I would say it's shifted, it's like there's the healing path and then there's the practice. So I appreciate and I love all the freedom that I gave myself in the spiritual world in order to find my truth and to solidify my ego in a healthy way, and to find the healing. And now I'm actually really enjoying structure, and I'm really enjoying, you could even say, religion. And I'm finding a lot of peace there. So my journey has shifted to not so much focused on healing, but focused on practice. So the practice is what keeps me peaceful and what keeps me content and focused on what's important in my life, and really keeps me grounded in my body. Like all of those things that are so important, especially if you've ever experienced trauma. Trauma is such a somatic experience. So it's really takes you like practicing things like yoga or meditation and dance. Dance is one of my favorite things to do. So, yeah. And of course, tea, that I'm all about tea. That's been a really transformative plant for me. So, yeah, just getting back to nature, it's all there. It's all there for us.
There's so much healing in nature, whether it is through substance or being in nature, grounding, literally feet on the ground. Like there's so much healing available for us.
Yeah. If we can just slow down and listen and turn off the phone, stop, becoming, like I always say, like you want to stop living from the outside in like a black hole, and you want to become a star and live from the inside out. And I really feel like just connecting to nature in whatever way you can. For me, it's through working with plants. And I really believe in this incredible intelligence, divine intelligence within plants. But it could also just be like going on long hikes.
Sure.
And
wherever you feel, like everyone's different, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Or gardening or,
the moment, appreciating it, touching it, whatever feels right for you, taking something. Yeah. Everyone's different.
Yeah. But yeah, just really listening, getting in tune with yourself, and asking like, what can I give? What are my gifts? Because I really do believe that all of us do have those gifts. And I feel like my story is a part of that for me. It's like everything that I've experienced is a gift. Everything. I'm so grateful for all of it because it's my medicine,
Yeah. You had to go through every step to get to where you are right now. It makes you who you are. And wow, it's incredible. Well, I'm really grateful for you, and I'm grateful for you sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I know you've done a lot of work, and it's it takes courage to tell it, and vulnerability with your family. And I wish your father and everybody so much love and their own healing, and you and your continued journey.
Yeah, so much, Lauren.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. So thank you so much. This has been incredible. It's very eye-opening, and just a reminder of how we can all just have so much compassion, forgiveness, and love for ourselves, and then for others too. That's Absolutely. A lifelong practice. So yeah. You got to keep keeping on.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Do you want to share? Do you care to share like any social media or anything where people might be able to follow your journey, or do you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My social media is songbird _living, songbird living
on Instagram.
Right?
I think
Healing. I changed it. Songbird_healing.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Sounds-
Instagram. Yeah, very fun. Well, thank you, Kayla.
Thank you so much. Aloha, everybody.
Aloha. Thank you for listening, everyone. You can find me on my Instagram at RealLaurenLive and my website, Lauren.live. I hope you enjoyed today. I know that it was very inspiring and touching for me. So take care, everybody.